On a bustling afternoon, the clang of plates and the murmur of conversation filled the air at Joe's Diner, a quaint roadside establishment known for its hearty meals and welcoming atmosphere. Nestled between the verdant arms of sprawling highways, it was a popular stop for both weary travelers and the local clientele. At the heart of the diner's charm was Emily Johnson, a waitress in her mid-30s, whose presence was as steady as the endless pots of coffee she poured. With her hair pulled back into a no-nonsense ponytail and her apron dusted with flour, Emily moved between the tables with an ease and efficiency that belied her background. Few knew that, beneath the unassuming exterior of a diner, Waitress beat the heart of a decorated combat veteran, skilled in handling much more than just difficult customers. As the lunch rush began to ebb, the rumble of engines announced the arrival of a new wave of patrons. A gang of bikers, known in the area both for their love of the open road and their less than stellar reputation, swaggered into the diner. Their leather jackets were adorned with patches and symbols that clinked with every boisterous laugh and slap on the back. The leader of the bikers, a burly man named Mick, led his crew to a large table near the back. He shot a look around the diner that was part appraisal, part challenge, his gaze eventually landing on Emily as she set down a tray of food at another table. Mick's smirk widened as he turned to his comrades, nodding toward her. "Watch this," he murmured loud enough for those nearby to hear, sparking a round of chuckles from his group. Emily, feeling the weight of their stares, approached with menus in hand. "Afternoon, gentlemen. What can I get you started with today?" she asked, her voice a practiced blend of hospitality and firmness. The bikers made no move to look at the menus. Instead, Mick leaned back, his eyes raking over Emily dismissively. "You know what, sweetheart? Why don't you surprise us? Something sweet just like you," he drawled, his words dripping with condescension. Emily's smile didn't waver, though her eyes hardened just a fraction. "I'll bring out our specials for the day," she replied, turning on her heel before Mick could continue. As she walked away, the bikers' laughter followed her, a sound that grated more than the squeak of the old diner door. But unbeknownst to them, Emily was no stranger to hostile environments, having faced far greater threats than a few rowdy bikers. Her calm demeanor masked a readiness honed on distant battlefields, a skill set that was all about keeping cool under pressure, a trait that would soon prove invaluable. As Emily returned to the kitchen to place the biker's order, her mind wasn't on the food. Her training had taught her to be observant, to notice when a situation might turn south, and right now, every instinct was on alert. She could hear the rowdy laughter and boisterous banter growing louder, the kind of escalating noise that often preceded trouble. When she re-emerged from the kitchen with a tray laden with burgers and fries, the specials she had promised, the atmosphere at the bikers' table had shifted noticeably. The group was more animated, their movements more expansive, and their voices pitched higher with bravado, or perhaps too much beer. Setting down the plates with her usual efficiency, Emily caught snippets of their conversation, challenges about strength, dares thrown about recklessly. It was typical macho posturing, but with an edge that kept her on high alert. "Anything else I can get for you?" Emily asked, maintaining her professional demeanor despite the charged atmosphere. "Yeah, how about your number?" one of the bikers sneered, earning a chorus of laughs from his companions. Emily responded with a practiced smile, the kind that kept her eyes cold. "Just the check then," she said, turning to leave. Mick, feeling bold and clearly looking to impress his audience, reached out and grabbed Emily's arm as she passed. His grip was firm, intended to startle. "Don't be like that, sweetheart. We're just having some fun." Emily's reaction was immediate and controlled. Her military training, never far from the surface, kicked in. She didn't flinch, nor did she pull away. Instead, she turned slowly to face Mick, her expression unreadable. "You need to let go," she said, her voice low but clear enough for the others to hear. The laughter died down as the bikers sensed the shift. The diner had gone quiet too. Other patrons sensed the tension, watching nervously. Mick smirked, his grip tightening. "What if I don't want to?" That was the line, the point of no return where Emily knew she had to take action, not just for herself, but for the safety and comfort of everyone in the diner. With a swift practice move, she twisted her arm, breaking his grip, then stepped back and positioned herself in a defensive stance she hadn't used outside of a combat zone. It was second nature, drilled into her until it was almost instinctual. The bikers were momentarily stunned, their expressions a mix of surprise and confusion. Mick, recovering his bravado, stood up, knocking his chair back. "You're going to regret that," he growled, stepping towards her. Emily stood her ground, her eyes never leaving Mick's. "I can handle a lot more than you might think," she replied calmly, her voice steady. The standoff lasted only a moment longer before Mick lunged at her, driven by pride and the need to reclaim control of the situation. But Emily was ready. She sidestepped his charge, then used his momentum to guide him forward, sending him sprawling onto the floor with a technique that was all efficiency and no flash. She didn't need to use excessive force. Her skill and strategic thinking were enough. The entire diner watched as Mick hit the floor, his own surprise mirrored on the faces of his gang. They scrambled to their feet, but none advanced. They were bikers, not soldiers, and Emily's display of skill had shifted the power dynamic significantly. As Mick picked himself up, his face a mix of shock and embarrassment, Emily addressed the entire gang. "I suggest you leave before this escalates any further. This is a family diner, and we won't tolerate this behavior." The bikers collected themselves and left without further incident, their exit a mixture of haste and humiliation. The other patrons, once silent and tense, now broke into relieved murmurs and even some quiet applause. Emily stood watching until the bikers had disappeared from view, her posture relaxing slightly, but her senses still alert. Her fellow veterans, present among the patrons, nodded in approval, recognizing not just the physical skills, but the discipline and control with which she had handled the confrontation. After the bikers had left, the diner slowly returned to its usual rhythm. The clatter of dishes and the murmur of conversations resumed, albeit with an undercurrent of excitement over the incident that had just unfolded. Emily went back to her duties, refilling coffees and clearing tables, but the atmosphere around her had changed. Where there had been casual indifference, there was now a palpable sense of respect. As she passed between the tables, several patrons stopped her to express their gratitude and admiration. "That was something else?" one elderly gentleman said, his eyes twinkling with a mix of amusement and respect. "Reminds me of my own days in the service. You handled that beautifully." A family with young children thanked her for keeping the diner safe, and a group of teenagers asked her about her military service, their curiosity piqued by her skills. Emily answered their questions with humility, downplaying her actions as simply doing what was necessary. In the midst of this, her manager, a stout woman named Marlene, approached her, a worried expression on her face. "Emily, are you all right? I've never seen anything like that." Emily smiled reassuringly. "I'm fine, Marlene. It's all in a day's work. But maybe we should think about hanging a "No Biker Gang" sign out front." Marlene chuckled, relief evident in her laugh. "I'll consider it, but seriously, thank you. Not just for today, but for being who you are. You make this place a little safer, a little better." As the diner began to close for the evening, Emily took a moment to sit at a booth by the window, her gaze following the long road that stretched out in front of the diner. She reflected on the day's events, not with pride, but with a veteran's pragmatism. It wasn't the first time she had faced aggression, nor would it be the last. But each encounter reminded her of the lessons she'd learned in combat, about courage, about control, and about the human capacity for both conflict and respect. Her thoughts were interrupted by a gentle tap on the glass. She looked up to see a couple of the diner's regulars, a group of older veterans who frequented Joe's diner for its coffee and its camaraderie. They stood outside, their faces marked by lines of experience much like her own. One of them, a burly man with a grizzled beard, saluted her through the window. Emily stood and walked to the door, opening it to greet them. "Evening, gentlemen," she said, her tone warm. "We saw what happened earlier," the burly veteran said. "Haven't seen moves like that since my days in the desert. You've got the respect of this old squad, that's for sure." "Thank you," Emily responded, her voice tinged with genuine appreciation. "It means a lot, coming from you all." They chatted for a few more minutes, exchanging stories and sharing a laugh or two, before the veterans headed on their way, leaving Emily to lock up the diner. As she turned the key in the lock, Emily felt a sense of peace settle over her. Today had been a reminder of her past life, of the skills she had honed and the battles she had fought. But it was also a reaffirmation of her new life here, among people who valued her, not just for her combat skills, but for her steady presence. Emily walked to her car, the stars overhead bright and clear. The road was quiet now, the night calm. She knew challenges lay ahead, but she also knew she was ready for them. After all, she was a combat veteran in a small diner's uniform, and she had just shown that strength comes in many forms.